One of the questions that I get constantly is, how old is my Magnalite and what's it worth? I'm going to show of how you can date it. It's not an exact science. You cannot get it within a year. You can get it within a decade. And essentially there were 4 series of Magnalite. I have the same piece from 3 different series here. These are the 3 most collectible. And then the later series is very common and not particularly collectible. So I'm going to start with the oldest one that I have right here. And you can see it's pretty much the same vessel as the other 3. I've taken the handle off because I'm working on polishing this. But if you can see the logo here, this is the original Magnalite logo from the earliest period. It was invented around 1936. So this would have been pre-war Magnalite. And it has 3 little indentations in the handle, but the handle is otherwise the same shape as all of the other pieces. And this is the earliest logo that you'll see, and probably the one that's the most valuable. The next oldest would be 50s, 60s era, and probably immediately post-war. It's not as worn on the bottom, for one thing, because it's not as old. But the Magnalite logo has changed. It's a much more printed looking script, I guess, rather than the other one that just looked kind of handwritten. Same model number for the vessel, but that's the newer Magnalite script. And you'll notice it says nothing about trademark or anything like that. It just has Magnalite on the bottom of it. And this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 much sharper indents in the handle than the older ones do. And then this is the newest of the collectible series, but it's still quite collectible. This was probably from the 1970s. This is the end of the original Wagnerware Magnalite Sydney O era. It looks pretty much like the other one. The Magnalite logo is etched a little deeper, and it has the addition of an R for a registered trademark. That's the only way you can tell the difference between the 3 early eras of Magnalite. Later editions will say Magnalite, made in USA, GHC, or General Housewares Corporation. And I think there are even a handful of pieces out there that say Chicago Cutlery on them. Those are from later. Those are from the 80s. They were still made in the United States. They are just as good as any of the Magnalite that you may have seen earlier. They're just not as collectible because they're not as old. Magnalite made after that was made in China. It says made in China on the bottom of it, and it is not considered as collectible. Wagnerware Magnalite is what is collectible. In terms of what's usable, whatever you have works. It's high quality cookware. It's very heavy. It's cookware I grew up around in South Louisiana. People use this pot, which was built as a roaster, by the way. This is called the roaster. And it was built to put a bird or a roast or whatever in and put it in the oven. Almost everybody in South Louisiana makes gumbo in a pot like this. And you may wonder why, but it makes perfect sense. A stock pot that held 8 quarts would be tall, but this roaster that holds 8 quarts is horizontal. So it's much easier to cook a roux in the bottom of this pan, especially if you're a little short. You can reach in, you can see in, and you don't have to stand on a stool or otherwise risk burning your arms trying to reach down into a stock pot to make roux. And it saves you having to make roux in a skillet and then transfer it to a stock pot. That's why you see a lot of people, especially the big 13-quart one, will span 2 burners on a gas stove. A lot of people do that. Gives them more control over the heat. So it's one of the reasons why they're very popular in South Louisiana. As far as value, they're worth whatever somebody will pay for them. I've seen different prices. I price mine based on the going rate on the marketplace that I'm selling on. So I do research, I look to see what others are selling for, and I try to price in that range. One of the things that we're covering when we price Magnalite on most marketplaces is we're covering our time, because they don't come in looking pretty. These are not polished yet, by the way. These are nowhere near ready to be sold. They have been cleaned, however, and that's the difference. That's why you can see the bottoms, and I can show you those logos because they've been cleaned. When they come in, they typically look like this, and that's probably I mean, that carbon is so thick on there, I can't really even read the model number on it. Once that's cleaned up, I'll be able to assess what I have here. This is, I believe, the 10-inch covered skillet. It's a pretty good seller. It's great for frying chicken or other things on the stove top. One of the other things that affects the value of Magnalite is whether it has its roasting rack with it. A lot of people, in the common name for these lately is trivets. People call this the trivet, but it's really not a trivet. I guess you could use it to set the piece on to protect a surface, but the problem is this is not designed to protect a surface. The purpose of this roasting rack was to go into the vessel and hold the meat up off of the cooking liquid so that you were truly roasting and not braising. And you can tell the older pieces had stamped roasting racks that fit in. They have just little bumps for their little feet, and they fit in stamped metal. Later models, later pieces have a cast aluminum one that has little tiny pin feet. These are more recent, they're heavier, and they sit up maybe a little higher in the roaster. We have, in some cases, what is called in Magnalite nomenclature, a spinner. A spinner is not good. What happens sometimes if somebody kind of overheated a pan, it will warp at the bottom and you'll get a little bump in it. What a spinner does, well, this one's not too bad. It's got the handle. When you get a roaster that's a spinner, it spins really bad. You can see this one wobbles. But one of the other things that I do is that I keep pieces. So I've had this vessel for a while. It had a broken handle, it has no lid. Here I have a warped vessel, but I've got a perfect handle and a perfect lid. So I'll get this all cleaned up and put together, and then I'll have a piece that someone can use and treasure. So that's a little bit about Magnalite. I'll be featuring Magnalite in the winter edition of Distinctive Living magazine, which will be coming out next week. My subscribers will get it in the mail. They'll get the printed copy, and then shortly after that, I'll be releasing the e-zine. It's all about the 50s. So it has the iconic Magnalite in it. It's got a couple of recipes you can cook in your Magnalite, a little bit of information about how housing changed during the 1950s, and what kind of houses were popular and were built during the 1950s.